You're welcome back. Well, I was talking about the inflation figure. Now we have Damilola Lupona, financial sector analyst with Chapel Hill Denham, to give us his own perspective. Hello, Damilola. Good morning. I think your microphone is muted. Could you unmute yourself? We can't hear you.
Is it better now?
Yes, now we can hear you. So I'll just go straight and ask, were you expecting inflation figures to taper? I know FDC had said it would go up, but now, of course, we saw it coming down. Did you see this coming?
Yes, we did. We had highlighted that the headline inflation for the month of September was going to decline, although it declined faster than our expectation. And what we had said was the base effect, we started at the earlier part of the year, was still going to drive inflation numbers, headline inflation numbers down. And true to our expectation, we saw headline inflation, declined 38 basis points to 16.63%, which, like I said before, is broadly in line with our expectations. And, driving the inflation was the decline, we saw in food inflation, because over the month of September, core inflation rose. So to your question, we had expected the dissipating headline inflations, and it didn't come as a surprise to us.
So food inflation drove the headline inflation, but Nigerians get a bit confused, about this issue with the food inflation, and yet prices are not decreasing. How do you relate this to?
Yeah, okay. I agree with you. The general food prices, in the market, are a bit elevated at the moment, especially when you compare it to pre-pandemic levels. But the inflation basket, measures the prices of food products, farm produce, and major food items. And what we saw was in the month of September, food inflation, moderated, from the 20% levels, we've seen over the past few months, particularly since the COVID-19 pandemic began. Food inflation, was 19.57%. And whilst it appears that we haven't seen, that filter into lower prices of major food items, I want to highlight that the underlying driver of some of the food items, we find, on the shelves, are majorly coming from the imported food inflation, as we understand that most of these items are imported. And, the major driver of the decline in headline food inflation, we saw in the month of September was also largely due to the harvest, we had in September. But I will also want to point out that on an average level, if you compare the harvest, we have in September to the pre-pandemic levels of 2018 and 2019, the harvest season is still somewhat weaker than what we had before, as the major food producing states like Borno, Yobe, and the northwestern states, are still facing various security concerns. So we are not seeing moderation in food prices like we would have seen if the pressures in those regions are not there. So I agree with you that on the street, the prices of food items might not be reflective of the decline in food inflation we've seen. But I also want to point out that if this trend, continues in the coming months, then we can start to see this decline in prices, filter into major basic food items.
So some analysts have suggested that perhaps there is a need to restructure the commodities basket that is being used to measure inflation, so that, for instance, this food inflation, whatever figure comes from the NBS will reflect the reality. Do you think along this line?
Yes, I do. I also think along this line as well. And this discussion has been around, for a very long time. I would say maybe over the last 2 years. I think it's just a matter of time. The Nigerian Bureau of Statistics, I believe, would revisit the major constituents, of the inflation basket, and which might give birth to the food inflation, having less influence on the overall headline inflation. Currently, the food inflation basket, currently accounts for bulk of the headline inflation. And we currently understand that, major items or major prices of other items, we use on a daily basis, especially the non-food items, are not adequately catered for in the current inflation basket. So I believe that, a major catalyst for the decline in food inflation might be the restructuring of the inflation basket, but we don't have a specific date as to when that will happen. So I think for now, we are just left to activities around, the harvest season and other factors, affecting the food prices and other core components as the underlying driver for the decline in headline inflation we might see in the coming months.
So if that thought was to be followed through, that is restructuring the commodities basket, what changes do you think should be made to make it, to make the figures real?
Okay. I think first of all, a major constituent of the inflation basket, is the food, like I mentioned. And when you also look at the food basket as well, it's made up of farm produce, majorly. And you would agree with me that beyond the farm produce, there are other essential food items, that filter into inflation numbers, and their weight currently in the inflation basket, is not so much, and we might not see the kind of impact, we are expecting to see. A typical example is, you know that Nigeria is a major importing country, and most of our food items are imported. But it will surprise you, to find out that the imported food inflation, is still a fraction of the inflation basket, and bulk of it is still driven by prices of major farm produce. So a major change I would like to see is, the current prices of farm produce, have lesser influence, than it does at the moment on the overall headline inflation. And we should now start to see, prices of major items, stationaries, and other items, we use on a daily basis, filter into the computation of headline inflation.
All right, just very briefly now, there's been a lot of effort by the CBN by lending to the agricultural sector. Is that having the expected or desired effect?
Over the past year, it has not had the expected effect. I think the CBN has disbursed about 791 billion to about 3 million farmers, under the Anchor Borrower scheme. And you would expect that with that particular amount, you will expect to see food prices, decline faster. But then you would also agree with me that the COVID-19 pandemic as well has also disrupted activities of farmers, and that has made the decline in food prices, that has made it slower than it is. So as the economy returns to normalization, we'll begin to see, the impact of CBN's lending to the agri sector, filter into the inflation numbers, going forward.
All right, thank you so much, Damilola Lukpano, financial sector analyst with Chapel Hill. Then enjoy the rest of your day.
You too. Thank you.
So after the break, Nigeria is one of 4 countries to resist the global minimum tax agreement. Let's find out why. It's Business Morning on Channels Television.